everyone, and welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is brought to you by LawSikho. These are the two important articles that we will be discussing today. First, transforming business and the insolvency system. So this is from the Hindu, and this article basically talks about that how the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 can act as a boon in resolving the matters concerning the insolvency, and specifically at the time of COVID-19 when economic setup has been hampered so badly. Insolvency is one issue that has been faced severely by the market, and that is why IBC 2016 can be a good rescue to the situation. And the second one, a commission misguided. Basically, this talks about the NCPCR, which is the National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights, and how the functioning of the NCPCR has not been so good in the recent times, and what should have been the good steps that had to be taken by the commission. So we'll discuss this in detail. And lastly, we have the news in flash, which discusses the short and crisp pointer news, which is more important for our prelims exam. Then before that, let's have a look at the LawSikho courses that we have for you. We have the Lord of the Courses, which is the Judiciary Test Prep course. And if you're also preparing for Judicial Services exam, that you may also have a look at it and enroll yourself for the same. The link to this course is available in the description box of this video. And you can also download free study material from there, which is very nicely drafted for all the aspirants. We have various other courses also. They can be viewed at the LawSikho page. Let's see what is the multiple choice question for the day. Which of the following is a kind of cybercrime? First, phishing. Second, bullying or cyberbullying. Third, stalking. Or fourth, all of the above. So if you know the answer to this question, do put it down in the comment section below. Then this is the descriptive question for the day. Discuss in detail the benefits that the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016 has offered to the foreign investors and various MSMEs. You have to write down the answer within a word limit of 250 to maximum 300 words. So let's discuss the first article for the day, which talks about the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. Basically, Prime Minister Modi has recently mentioned that the IBC 2016 code it can be treated as one of the key reforms that would help India become self-reliant. Now, as we know that we recently have proclaimed to become Atmanirbhar Bharat, or what we call as self-reliant India. And in that regard, it is really important that we are also economically self-reliant and we are independent of various factors and various outer resources for that matter. And that is why this actually, the IBC Code 2016 can actually help improve the ease of doing business, as it has also been proved by Resolving Insolvency Index, which is in which we have ranked 52nd in 2019 from a rank of 108th in 2018. So actually in 2018, we were 108th in this position, but we have jumped directly to 52nd position in the Resolving Insolvency Index. And also this has helped in increasing the foreign direct investment to India. And there has been an approximate increase of 20% in 2019 to 20. Now let's understand in detail as to why the IBC 2016 is a major reform and what additions in a positive manner has it made to the Indian market. Firstly, it has focused more on time-bound resolution rather than liquidation. So basically by liquidation, we means that a situation in economy or a situation in any financial institution wherein no matter how much more money you are injecting to the economy or into that institution or whatever steps you are taking, there is no growth that you are seeing in it. And that basically is called as liquidation. And in this context, it may be something like, something that has become stagnant and is not bringing any growth or any output, a positive output or income. So here it says that the IBC 2016 has focused a lot on resolution of these problems, and that too on a time-bound basis. As you know, the resolutions or the resolving of issues is not very lethargic or very, very time-taking. Rather, it focuses a lot on a time-bound resolution or a time-bound solution to the problems, rather than leading to the problem of liquidation. And that is why it is one of the key drivers or the key, or the USPs to say for the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. So there are some facts to substantiate this stance. Firstly, it says that the recovery rate improved 3 times from 26.5% in 2018 to 71.6% in 2019. Secondly, overall time taken in recovery improved three times from 4.3 years in 2018 to 1.6 years in 2019. As in, that if any financial institution is facing the problem of liquidation, so the problem of this or any other kind of financial problem that it is facing, it is being resolved and recovered at a faster rate and and it takes only a lesser time as compared to before. Now, why this is really important for an economy just like India is because approximately 4 crore matters are currently pending in India just regarding these issues, which already we know that the matters that are related to other areas also are already pending in the Indian courts at a very high rate, and to which 4 crores alone are the matters coming from this area. And approximately 1,115 days on an average are taken for a contract to be enforced, which is a very long duration and actually brings down the very purpose of enforcement of that contract. And that is why this kind of speedy functioning of the code actually is helping a lot in the enforcement at a good time. Secondly, both flexible and dynamic. Now, as we know that the IBBI, which is the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, it both regulates as well as develops the insolvency policies and assess market realities. So, as we know that whatever policies are going on to avoid the insolvency, and if at all insolvency has occurred, so how to wrap it up to make sure that the least damage is given to the made to the society or the stakeholders or the financial institutions. So in that scenario, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India, it not only regulates the already existing insolvency policies, but then it also develops more of the insolvency policies as and when required with time. And thirdly, improved confidence in the investors and investees in the corporate resolution methodology. Now, here is one example where it comes for the foreign direct investments, because now if any kind of FDIs come to India, they know that in case of any insolvency or if in the hard times, if we have to see any hard times in the future, so the very setup or the proper functioning in the Indian market regarding the insolvency and bankruptcy, it's really smooth and it is really easy to shut down or close a business with least or minimal of the damages. And this actually has increased the confidence which exists and is also very necessary between the investors, like those who pay the money, and investees where they pay the money. So it has very it has increased the coordination and confidence between these two important bodies. And finally, it has allowed credit to flow more freely. Now, obviously, a consequence of all of this would be this, because here you know that if in case there is a chance or there happens some exigency in the future that the credit is not to be, it won't be paid up easily, or the person might become insolvent, still you will have an option of coming out of that situation with least of the damages and saving your time, money, and all the efforts as well. So this actually ensures a better credit flow in the economy, and that is why it has helped India within the country as well, and also to India or towards India, the economy, the credit flow is happening quite smoothly. And if we have this same pace going on, so the future ahead is that there should be introduction of pre-packed insolvency resolution processes that can be institutionalized. So basically, this would cater to the specific contracts or specific kinds of investor investee relationships, wherein they would already have a pre-decided or a pre-packed insolvency resolution process. Just like, for an example, if we take the example of the contracts under the Indian Contract Act, so we basically have the in a way, we already have a clause for the liquidated damages, as in that if there is a breach of contract or there is a possibility or a chance, like a frustration of contract occurs and it is not possible to execute that particular contract, so this and these would be the amount that would be payable to each other. In a way, in case of an exigency, the decisions or the outcomes are pre-decided in a way. On the similar lines, it also says that in case of any insolvency occurs, so to resolve or to resolve that insolvency, a pre-packed process should be designed beforehand itself. And secondly, we should also enhance the digital infrastructure, as due to COVID-19, we know that the basic trials also have not been able to take place as a speed they needed to, and virtual hearings are going on. So in the area of insolvency and bankruptcy as well, we should invest more into digital infrastructure, like conducting all processes and hearings online as well. Now the government of India is working towards, like, let's see that what was the government specifically more working towards. differentiating between good faith mistakes and intentional bad faith actions. So basically decriminalization of minor offenses. Now this is one another factor that would actually enhance the entrepreneurship and startups in India, because many a times when the young startups are there, new or small startups or entrepreneurships are there, they fear the fact that what if we would not be able to comply with the with maybe the guidelines, or maybe the give an intake of debt and etc. So in that situation, it actually disincentivizes them to come into the area of startup. But this step wherein the government would decriminalize the minor offenses and would take into account the offenses or the wrongs that actually a person did in good faith, but still something wrong happened, but the motive or the faith was good in that person's head, so that the government would be considering, and decriminalization would actually act further towards incentivizing more and more entrepreneurships and startups in the country. And next, introducing MSME and non-MSME framework to help expedite the process. So as we know that MSMEs play a very important role when it comes to Indian economy. And that is why it is really important, and it is really a crucial step taken by the government, that it would introduce a specific MSME framework and a specific non-MSME framework to help to flourish the process even further. So yes, this was all for this article. It was a very interesting read. Do give it a read from the Hindu. It's a very good article written over there. Now let's discuss the second one for the day, which talks about the National Child Rights Body. So the National Child Rights Body in India is the NCPCR, which is the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. So basically, in pursuance of a directive from Supreme Court to conduct a social audit on the childcare institutions. So a few time back, some time back, the Supreme Court had given this directive to the NCPCR to conduct a social audit, in a way, a social inspection in a way on the childcare institutions. Now, as we know, childcare institutions are various, those institutions that actually accommodate children. They take care of the basic facilities, education, sanitation, etc. of children. These are sometimes they come up from the side of government, so their government also they come from in the name of NGOs as well. So they can be government as well as non-government institutions. Now, this article that basically talks about is that what have been the results, or in a way, what have been the implications, or what has been the impact of this audit, which has been recently done by the NCPCR. So firstly, the NCPCR initiated a social audit in 2015, and upon its completion, it ordered, firstly, institutionalization, repatriation, and rehabilitation of children in childcare institutions in 8 states. So after its social audit, it said that those children who are there in the childcare institutions, they should be repatriated. That is, they should be given back to their families. They should be rehabilitated. But then again, this point was, or this step was highly criticized by various civil society members. It's because they said that most of the children in the childcare institutions suffered abusive conditions in their family, and that was the very reason why they were brought into these CCIs, or the childcare institutions. Now, if after this social audit you have ordered the CCIs to take these children back to their respective families or their origins or their people who they belong to, so definitely you are actually putting them back into the very same abusive situation from where they were once rescued. And the NCPCR mandated repatriation without a case-by-case assessment plan. Now, this is something that should have been taken care of, because many times there are children who are lost and they do not, they were not in a real abusive family environment, but they were lost. So it would be a very welcome step to actually repatriate them, or to give them back, or to make them meet their family back again. But what about those children who were actually in an abusive environment and were rescued in a way and have been brought back to the CCIs? So for this situation, it was very ideal that a case-by-case assessment plan should have taken place, and only then, after assuring the circumstances of each case, only those children who actually were safe in their homes be given back to their homes. Otherwise, they should have been allowed to stay back in the CCIs alone. But that has not happened, unfortunately. Next, the NCPCR conducted raids on 2nd October, so this was on Gandhi Jayanti, in some selected NGO-run CCIs, or the childcare institutions, to check misusing of foreign funds. Now, as we already know, that the government has been really strict about the foreign funds coming to various NGOs. Even after now, we know that very recently, the FCRA, that is the Foreign Contributions Regulation Act, has been amended, wherein a lot of restrictions have been put up on the foreign funds coming to various NGOs. So, in this very line, the NCPCR also conducted raids on the 2nd October regarding the to check if there is any misuse of these foreign funds by the NGO-run CCIs. So it was again opposed by the civil societies, as it said that already the FCRA regulations were outside the mandate of NCPCR. So because NCPCR is itself it's a different body, and to say conducting any kind of raids to ensure that there is no misuse of foreign funds or something like that, it's a good step. But then again, it does not fall in the ambit of or the mandate of the NCPCR as a body. And then raids targeted individual critiques of the central government. Basically, an analysis of these raids has actually revealed that most of these raids were conducted on those NGOs or on those childcare institutions run by those NGOs, which were actually against or critical to the government when the question of NRC or the Citizenship Amendment Act had taken place, and they were actually in a protest against the government. And most of the raids have also taken place, maybe it is coincidentally, but it has taken place on those very NGOs only, mostly. And the raids had communal overtone. So it now says that maybe the actual or the real cause behind these raids is not really to check the misuse of foreign funds or something like that. Rather, it is something more of a communal overtone. And here, in the conclusion, it has been told that what should have been the ideal role that must have been played by the body. Firstly, it must have taken cognizance of gross violation of children's rights during lockdown and its aftermath. Now, as we know, that in the times of COVID-19 and the lockdown that had occurred and this entire havoc that was created in the society, children were one of those one of that section of the society that was highly abused. Now, be it in the name of child marriage, child labor, child abuse, or child kidnapping and trafficking as well, because these are some kind of crimes that have actually exacerbated or increased in the times of COVID-19. And this was something of what the cognizance should have been taken by NCPCR, but there is no welcome step coming on from the side of NCPCR in this regard. And reports of Dalit children and young women being raped and murdered, they're being very, very openly coming up in the market, in the market of the social fabric of this common area. And very recently, as we know, that the rape and murder of the very young girl of Hathras, that Hathras rape case is coming up. So she was also a Dalit girl, and that is why these are the areas where NCPCR should be coming up with more of force and more, vigilance. But that has sadly not been happening. And also, the issue recommendations and to issue recommendations and strengthen all child-related institutions, both governmental and NGOs. So, in a way, like we see that the raids were also conducted only on the NGOs, and that is the NGO run CCIs. But the governmental ones were totally ignored. So that should not be the case. The center should be child rights, and anything that would violate a child rights should be something that should be in the hit list of NCPCR, and that is how we would consider it to be working in an ideal manner. And thirdly, appreciate the relief measures taken by the civil societies, because obviously we know that it is not only the government that has played important role in bringing up the child rights, but also the civil society and the NGOs have played a very, very crucial role from time immemorial to give relief measures to children and their rights and restoring their rights. And that is why the NCPCR should also come in appreciation with these civil societies. With this, let's discuss what do we have for news in flash today. Firstly, the world's longest highway tunnel opened in Himachal Pradesh. Prime Minister Modi has inaugurated the Atal Tunnel at Rohtang, which is situated at an altitude of above 3,000 meters. So it is 9.02 kilometers long, connecting Manali to Lahaul Spiti Valley, built by DRDO. So it has reduced the travel time by 46 kilometers between Manali and Leh. So this is the longest highway tunnel in the whole world. The tunnel will allow to open Lahaul Valley throughout the year. So earlier it was not possible due to the heavy snowfall, but now since it is a tunnel, it will actually make it possible to travel to Lahaul Valley throughout the year. Yes. So second is fishing gang played on sympathy. So basically this is the incident as such is not really important. 4 persons from Rajasthan have been arrested in this regard. They were involved in fishing racket care. What we need to know is what fishing that actually means. So in phishing, it is a kind of a cyber crime. The targets are contacted by email, telephone, or text message by impersonating some legitimate institution to obtain sensitive data such as banking details, passwords, etc. Now, this is one offense probably must have happened with each one of you who is listening this newspaper analysis. Many a times we get a call from some random person calling from some so and so bank. You know, he claims to be calling from so and so bank, and they say that your ATM card has been hacked, or it is blocked, or something like that, or some account transfer has to be made. Can you share your OTP, or can you share your account number, so and so. So these all calls, when they try to personate themselves as some authentic authority, this is something called as phishing, and this is one of the cyber crimes which is very prevalent these days. So yes, this was all for the day. Thank you so much for being connected with Lossy.